Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of our weekly Exploring the Parasha class with Rabbi Rebecca Schatz and Rabbi Matt Shapiro.
Parashat Vayelech. Let's do this.
For the people who are listening to the podcast, you missed me listing out my worst ritual experiences of all time. So it's like a deleted scene.
Join us on Zoom.
It's like a deleted scene from they don't really do deleted scenes anymore because it's everything's streaming.
I think we can start.
Before we start, Rabbi Schatz.
Oh, yes.
Should we tell the people what we're doing in 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Do you know what we're doing in 2 weeks?
No.
I think we're gonna try to do an in-person CM, right?
Oh, yes.
We're gonna try to make that happen. So for those of you who are in and around the 90035 and want to try to join us on campus here, we're gonna try to carve a space out somewhere. Stay tuned on the space, but we'll still Zoom it and we'll still record it. But if folks wanna try to join us in person for a hooray, we did it, and maybe a little l'chaim for having made it all the way through these crazy books. We can try to make that happen. Right, Rabbi Schatz?
Yeah, great.
Did you know that before I said that?
I knew that we were. I just didn't know that that there were plans in place, but I knew that we were going to try to do it. So it's great.
Well, we were talking about it. I think those are. I think for us, I think that officially counts as plans.
Okay. Yeah.
Should we talk about the Parsha?
Yeah, I'm very ready.
Oh, you even shared your screen ahead of me. I thought I shared my screen.
Yeah. I was just trying to start getting going. Okay.
All right. Okay. I'm very excited about these. Verses. It's been a while. I felt like we've been kind of scrounging the bottom of the Bamidbar barrel. Wow, I forgot what book we're in. Of the Dvarim barrel. There we go. For a little while now, but I was very excited about these. Usually, I think Rabbi Schatz mentioned this last week. Usually it's Nisavim Vayelech. Usually it's a double parsha. We have the joy and the pleasure of having Vayelech Stam this week, and how exciting that is. Okay, Moses still giving his monologue. We're about to wrap things up, in case folks didn't know. Moses went and spoke. He said, "I'm now 120 years old." 120 years old. That's quite an age to be schlepping through the desert. I can't do this anymore. God has said, "You shall not go across the Jordan." God will cross over before you. He will wipe out these other nations. Joshua is the one who shall cross before you. Again, we're getting a little repetitive here in the Dvarim oratory. God will wipe them out. God will deliver them to you. And then this phrase that actually pops up a lot in this parsha specifically, both to Joshua as an individual and also to the people. He says, "Chizku v'imtzu." You should be translated. You should be strong and resolute. Don't be afraid. God is with you. He will not fail you. And then we get sort of this individual conversation between Moses and Joshua in front of everyone, and you see that phrase again, chazak ve'amat, be strong and resolute, because you are going to lead them. God will go before you. Do not be afraid. And now we're going to get, we're moving more specifically into the verses that we're going to look at. Verse 9, which is not something we're specifically looking at, but is the direct lead-in. Vayechtov Moshe et HaTorah. Moses wrote down this teaching and gave it to the Kohanim, who were the ones who carried the ark, and also to all the elders of Israel. And now here's what we're going to really dive into today. So this is chapter 31 of Devarim, verses 10, 11, 12. Rabbi Schatz, just triple checking. Those are the verses you prepared too, right? We are clicking on all cylinders here as we start 5782. We mourned Gedalia. We had 2 days of holiday, and we are rocking and rolling. Okay, right, Rabbi Schatz?
Yeah.
Who else can feel Rabbi Schatz's excitement and vigor as we're heading into Shabbat? I can feel the excitement all the way here from the other side of the third floor at Temple Beth Am. Okay, verse 10.
From the assistant rabbi's office.
Wait a minute, that's whose office am I in? Oh, that's right, because I'm in the associate rabbi's office.
Go ahead.
Okay, all right. No? All right, okay. Vayitzav Moshe otam lemor. Moses commanded them, saying, Miket sheva shanim, at the end of 7 years, b'moed shnat hashmita bechag hasukot, in the Shemitah year, on the occasion of the Feast of Booths, as it's translated, or as you might know it, Sukkot, or some might call it, that's right, Sukkos. Very good. Beat me to it, as usual. Okay. Bevo Chol Yisrael leraot et pnei Adonai Elohecha. When all of Israel comes to appear before, it says, like, before Adonai your God. I mean, et pnei means like literally before the face of Adonai your God. Bamakom asher yivchar, in the place that God will pick, God will choose. Tikra et haTorah hazot. Read this entire Torah. Neged kol Yisrael be'ozneihem. In front of the presence of all of Israel, into their ears. Read it right into their ears. Hakel et ha'am. Gather up all of people. Ha'anashim v'hanashim v'hataf. The men and the women and the children. V'gercha asher bisharecha. And the strangers literally in your gate, strangers in your communities. Lema'an yishme'u u'lema'an yilmedu. So that they should hear it, and so that they should learn it. Ve'yaru et Adonai Elohechem, and so that they should have awe/fear of the Lord your God. V'shamru la'asot, and they should observe. It says to observe it faithfully, to protect it, and to do it. At kol divrei haTorah hazot, all of the words, all of the matters of this Torah. I have a lot to say about this, but I'm going to pause here because I don't want to preempt anybody's wonderful kushiot. And with that, I will turn it over to the most multitaskable Rabbi Rebecca Schatz. I left out your middle name. That was my New Year's gift to you.
Thank you. Yes, Karen.
Where did he write this?
Where did he, what do you mean?
It says he wrote down and Moses instructed them. No, up a little bit further. Didn't he say he wrote this out for them?
Well, we said, yeah. Yeah, you're asking on 9.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on 9.
You're on 9. I'll allow it. But watch yourself, McCoy.
The answer is we're probably talking here about the Torah, right? He wrote it, yeah. And so what we're referring to is the Torah, which some people would refer to as the tablets that we received before, but it's possible there's also something different, that it's an actual.
2 are the tablets that Moshe brought, and
that
one
these
is,
are
and
okay.
One is
that this is something completely different than the tablets, that this is actually a scroll like the one that we have in our ark that we read from.
So a scroll was writable at this time on parchment.
Well, we don't know when this time is, right? Because depending on what people's belief in Torah writing is, some people believe that Moshe wrote the whole Torah. Some people believe God wrote the whole Torah. Some people believe that humans wrote the whole Torah. And so maybe, right? It's unclear to us, but it does seem that Moshe wrote this piece down, and whether or not that's referring back to a time when he wrote things down on the tablets, or if it's its own thing, right, its own entity, is unknown to us. Elon, and then Renee.
Yeah, to me, the most interesting thing is in verse 12, where it says, gather the people. Typically, the people would refer to the men, but actually this is so important that it's not the men, women, children, and the strangers, right? So it's truly everybody, and I think that's that's interesting, and I'm curious as to if there is some kind of a rabbinic explanation for that.
Yeah, there's lots of rabbinic explanation for that. And that was the piece that I was also most interested in. There's actually a festival in Israel called Hakel, which I went to when I was living in Israel. And it is an opportunity for people to come together and do Torah study. It's kind of like a conference. It's one day. I think it's only one day. We only went for one day. I think it is only that day though. And it's like a festival of learning. And it does exactly this. It brings together people of all ages to be able to, and people who are Jewish, not Jewish, and to be able to learn Torah in all different kinds of ways. So there's traditional text study, there was music, there were kind of more experiential type learning around, doing things that also brought some learning into your heart. So that we definitely will get into the rabbinic pieces. And also I think this line itself has permeated into also how we want to be learning Torah all the time, and to who and how. So you're picking up on a very interesting piece. Renee.
Okay, so I'm a little all scattered all over the place, but the seventh year, is that considered the Shemitah year? Okay.
Oh, you're asking. Yes.
Yeah. And then
I thought you were making a statement. Yeah.
No, I was just asking. And then what is the year that's set for remission? What does that mean? What is that? And why, I'm assuming the Feast of Booths is Sukkot. Why Sukkot and not any other holiday?
I have a very good piece on this. Renee.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, you and the Kli Yakar, Renee. As always, you and the Kli Yakar are on the same page. I don't know if you usually are, but you are today. We're gonna clear the Kushiot, but I got a good one cooking for you, Renee.
All right.
Okay, Rebecca.
My question is sort of a follow-up to Renee's, and that is why only once every 7 years? If it's just something that should be done regularly, then why not once a year?
Great. Yeah. I think that Rabbi Shapiro will be going into that. So I will just let that stand as a kushia. Denise.
So, my first thing that popped into my head was, this is the Shemitah year. Are we going to do this? And then I wondered, does anybody do this, or did they ever do this? Or is this just something because I never heard of it. Which doesn't mean that it never happens, but I'm sort of assuming that means it's not like hugely known. So I'm just curious, why?
Are you talking about doing Shemitah or doing this kind of?
No, where it says during the Shemitah, every seventh year during Sukkot, we're supposed to gather everybody and learn something.
Right.
Whatever this teaching is.
Yeah.
But I don't remember ever, 7 years ago or 7 years before that, or I don't remember anything where people were, oh my God, it's Shemitah, Sukkot, we got to do this.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good point. And now that you're making that point, actually, I wonder if Hakel happened while I was there because it was a Shemitah year. I wonder if they actually don't do it every year. I wonder if they just do it on Shemitah years, which would be really interesting. We can definitely think about it. I mean, I think that we as a community are taking the idea of Hakel, to a great level all the time when we're trying to bring people together to learn. But I'm sure that together with our director of Vayelech, that we could think about maybe there's a way to have some kind of learning for everybody to do around the time of Sukkot, probably not on Sukkot, but around the time of Sukkot. In order to do this kind of Hakel experience together. And it's a beautiful
That's you, right?
Yeah. And I think that, in terms of Shemitah in our own community, it's an interesting, we are launching this year of a Shemitah year and focusing more on making our community green, both at the institutional level and also the communal level. And that Shemitah is typically something that is only observed in Israel, right? So we also have this flexibility of it being something that we are trying to take on as a really meaningful part of our of our calendar, a meaningful part of our tradition. And we have some flexibility around it because it's not happening we're not in the country where it actually is mandated to happen. So it's a great idea. And Rabbi Shapiro, I'm sure, will have some ideas to share with me as to how we can put something together called Hakel. Okay, he's saying he does. Great. Other kushiyot.
How do you indicate a sarcastic thumbs up?
I think you already did. Any other kushiyot? Okay. All right, Rabbi Shapiro, you want to go straight into that teaching since it'll answer the question at hand? You have to unmute before you talk.
Sure.
Okay.
I will just say I didn't get too far into this. Maybe Rabbi Schatz saw it more, but per Rashi, for whatever reason, and he cites out of the Talmud that he says this happens actually in the first year of the new Shemitah period. I'm not quite sure how to get that out of verse 10, but I generally trust Rashi on these things. But Rashi says it's actually in like the first, so it would technically be like next fall, which is not just my way of avoiding Rabbi Schatz putting me on the spot to generate a program in 6 days. But I can maybe scramble to look more at that before our time is up. But okay, so the question was asked about like why Shemitah and why Sukkot. This is part of a much longer piece, but the short answer per the Kliyakars is sort of twofold. He says the reason for this being at the end of 7 years, so at the end of the 7 year period, is because the 7th year causes assembly and peace because we don't plant on the land. Like there is something specific about the Shemitah year that brings about more gathering and peace together since, and this is very interesting, since all disagreement are from the perspective of what's mine is mine and someone else is saying, no, that's mine. So this is just such an interesting piece that he's saying that the way our system is set up usually, because we're each claiming what is individually ours, leads to disagreement and conflict. And so if we're going to go out of our way to set up a specific time to gather all together, it's good to do that after a Shemitah year, because we'll have just had a full year where that isn't happening. And then in terms of the question of Sukkot, he then sort of continues this line of thinking. He says, so too with Sukkot, when everyone goes out from a permanent dwelling to a temporary dwelling. That because we each leave where we usually live, and we're all sort of on the same level playing field of living in a temporary dwelling, of being in a sukkah. So all of that leads to making this kind of gathering possible. So I love how those two pieces build on each other. I love the idea. I love how he sort of gets at the sort of underlying idea of what Hakel, this sort of unique gathering, which by the way, as a side note, this very much falls in the category of like verses that have always been in the Torah that I have not looked at particularly closely before, and I think offer some really interesting stuff to think about. So I'm happy to be exploring these. But I love that 1-2 kind of thematic punch of having a Shemitah year brings people into closer connection with each other because of what it entails, and Sukkot Davka pushes that just sort of one step further. So Renee, Rebecca, I don't know if you were thinking along those lines. I don't know if that resonates with you, but I definitely think it's like an interesting 1-2 punch in terms of how he sets that up. So I'll pause there. I'm interested to hear what other folks think on that. Or not, and the Kliyakar perfectly answered everything.
I'm still not sure I get it.
You're basically saying that at that time, because it's Shemitah, because it's Sukkot, there's sort of the peace of mind to sit back and study this together without having to rush and plow the land or whatever would be the next thing to do.
Right. That there's an underlying principle in this concept of Hakel that we're supposed to really all be joining together in this. And because of what we've experienced in a Shemitah year, because of what we've all experienced in a Shemitah year, it has brought, Paula, she was saying that we're sort of going back and forth to unpack this, right? That there's something uniquely in Shemitah that brings us closer together, and there's something about the experience of Sukkot that both brings us closer together and sort of opens us up to experiencing this, like the sense of togetherness that much more, which is certainly not literally in the verses, right? The verses just sort of give the context for it, that it should be at this time in the Shemitah cycle, and it should be at this specifically on Sukkot, which prompted the questions of, well, why Shemitah and why Sukkot? And the Kli Yakar is saying, because the experience of that time in the agricultural cycle and the experience of that holiday open us up to a different kind of connection with each other and a different type of experience of community, which, regardless of how you do or don't keep Shemitah and or Sukkot, I think indicates something really beautiful around trying to see everyone around us as equals, trying to connect with that idea of impermanence and gratitude, which then makes it that much more likely that we can all come together. I really like how he sort of brings those pieces together. I think it's really lovely.
It's also pushing you out of your home already, right? The Sukkot is one of those times where you are being told to not stay where you are, but actually go outside of both your comfort zone physically, but also, just the general comfort of what home means, right? In terms of, in Los Angeles, that means air conditioning. That means, potentially a comfier seat than what you would find in a sukkah or something like that, right? No bugs, like that, those kinds of things, when you're then put outside, is a very different experience. And now, obviously, we all choose to go outside at different times, and outside is also beautiful. But I think that there's an element here of you are being told to gather, maybe in a way that you are not sure whether or not it's going to be comfortable, but you're being told to gather because there's something prominent that's going to come out of the experience. And so too with Sukkot at the end of these high holidays, that's the idea of kind of going into the year with Sukkot as the last experience before you do that.
Joanna, I see your hand. I just want to layer one piece on top of that as well, which is that there's a way in which Shemitah also pulls us out of our homes, right? Not literally, of course, but in terms of the home is the idea of a structure that we set up to protect ourselves in a way that is known and sort of that we can go to and that feels safe, right? We were talking about this a little bit when I was teaching on day one of Rosh Hashanah, this idea that there's a lot to surrender in a Shemitah year, so much so that we've actually had to set up a lot of workarounds for it to keep society functioning. Yeah. But the idea of just letting land grow for a full year, and then it really even goes into the 8th year as well, because you haven't done any agricultural work on it for the whole year leading into that. That's a real process of surrender and letting go and having some faith, right? You are really letting go of some pretty core important structures for how to sustain ourselves. I mean, particularly if you're talking about an agricultural, an agrarian society in the ancient Near East, right? That's a big leap of faith. So there is a faith piece to that, and then also a real community building piece to that I think is part of what he's talking about here too. Yeah, Joanna.
There's been this trend in Toronto, and I know from friends in New York, and I imagine all over, perhaps you've seen this in LA too, where people are super glamorizing their Sukkot. They're making them into these incredible, halachically they fit, it's still technically a Sukkah, but they're these super glamorous structures with people rent furniture, comfortable. So, and I sometimes wonder, is that taking us away from the essence of the holiday? Technically we might be fulfilling the letter of the law, But in terms of like this equalization and what like the sukkah represents, I sometimes wonder, as like fabulous as it is and as sometimes inspired as I am to see like the creativity and the artistry in it, are we losing something in going in that direction?
It's like it's like the Sukkot version of glamping.
So it's so interesting that you pointed that out, because I think that there's the opposite of that, which Rabbi Aaron Alexander is one of these people that makes his sukkah, I wouldn't say glamorous, but just makes it comfortable, makes it his office, makes it his place of study, makes it the place where he's going to spend all of his time for the days of Sukkot. And so he brings out his favorite chair, and he has a rug, and he brings out, his if any of you are friends with him on Facebook, you'll see this happen right after Yom Kippur. He really starts to create a home in his sukkah because that's where he's going to spend all of his time, and he takes that very seriously, that it should become like your home. So I think that there are two sides to that, right? Like, again, I don't think that he would call it glamorous, but there are pieces of making your sukkah comfortable so that you can spend all that kind of time in it, and knowing that there is something really, really powerful about kind of living in that discomfort for a week, knowing that that's the fragility of life, that we don't always get to create the comforts that we wish to have. And I think even he would say, it's comfortable, but it's definitely not as comfortable as in his home or in his actual office or whatever. But being able to create home and create space and create really sanctity in a sukkah is also something that people find to be quite a mitzvah, right? And something that you're supposed to make it at least beautiful, if not also comfortable. Rabbi Shapiro, was there something else on this particular topic that you had? I don't have anything on this topic, so.
No, I just thought that piece was particularly groovy and responded directly to some of the kushiot. So you mentioned putting stuff on the like men, women, and children stuff. Do you wanna hop over that?
Yeah, sure. So let me just. Okay, so there are a few different commentators here who I thought did a very interesting thing. Most commentators kind of make a comment and then move on. And a few of these commentators are using the same verse and making separate comments. And I don't know and I didn't have time to go into whether this was intentional, right? That like one was going to be answering specifically about men, and then the second one was going to be specifically about answering for women, and whether that separation was important to them or if it was just kind of the way that things were published. I don't know, but I found it particularly interesting because commentaries are not always written this compartmentalized. So Rashi starts off by saying, very simply, there are many more English words here than there are Hebrew words. It just says ha'anashim lilmod. So the men, why were the men asked together? To learn. And then Rashi goes on to say vehanashim lishmoa, and the women were there to hear. Now, the way that it's translated in English is in order to listen to the words of the law. Well, sure, that is what they were potentially listening to, but I love the idea that men were kind of just there for what we would call tachlis, right? Like just get the learning in, whereas the women were supposed to be really taking it in and hearing it, so then they could apply it. That's my Rashi on it, but and then Rashi goes. Ilan, I see you just 1 second. And then Rashi goes on to say vehatat, and the kids. Lama ba? Why were they told to come? Latet sachar limviehem. So that comes from Chagiga. That's what comes from a part of the Talmud. But it says, why did they come? To latet sachar, to be given a reward, because for the ones who actually bring them there, right? So why are the kids being brought? So
I didn't like that.
So the parents get a reward for bringing them.
I
actually really like it because I think
Nope.
Similarly to like Rosh Hashanah services, right? Where when I was outside, there were all different generations. Now, none of those children said, can I go to shul? I can promise you. None of them woke up in the morning and said, I'm really excited to be the one in this family that drags my family to shul. However, maybe to your programs, not to like my sermon. So I can promise you 150% kid.
That's true. I'm sure lots of adults did, Rabbi Schatz, but I think you're right. I think it's probably true that
Rafi was asking for you.
Well, there you go. No kid was asking to be in person for a service, maybe for a family program, but definitely not a formal service.
Just a family program.
So too with learning, I don't think the kids often are the ones who are kind of the pursuer in that. It's the parents. But the parents, if they don't do that, are not giving their kids that opportunity or that accessibility. So the parents, similar to kids in a classroom, when they do things well, they should be rewarded. The parents should be rewarded for bringing their kids, because now the kids also have that exposure and the kids have that opportunity. You don't have to like it, but I think I'm right.
Do you have Eben Ezra on there too? Do you?
Yeah. Yes, it's right there.
Are you gonna do that next?
Yes, I'm calling on Elon first.
I like his reasoning much better. I'm just
okay. Hold on.
So I actually think that you give Rashi way too much of the benefit of the doubt here. In fact, I find that his differentiation specifically between men and women is offensive, which is, I think if you asked Rashi what he meant, and you've put a 21st century interpretation on it, what he meant is the men, because they're going to learn it, women, they'll listen to it, right? So that they actually don't have the capacity to learn, and they're just going to listen to it. And you've put a feminist spin on it, but that which I think is a better spin, but I don't think that was Rashi's intention.
Agreed.
I'm sure you're right. I wasn't actually bringing this piece to say that I agree. I was bringing it more to show that the differences as to why the different categories of people were brought. The reason I gave it a spin was because I think that you are probably correct. So Ibn Ezra here says that so that they may hear and that they may learn. It actually doesn't have the Dibur Mathil here, but okay. When they hear, they will ask, and he who is not wise and the children who are young will learn, right? So I think that this is like the educational, response to this, that if you're there, they're going to hear what's going on and they're going to ask questions. And that even if they're not able to really understand what's going on, they're still going to take something in, right? They're still going to, by osmosis, get something out of the experience. It's part of the reason why parents bring kids to shul, right? Are they getting everything out of each moment of shul? Absolutely not. Even if the rabbi is doing a really great job of trying to make it something that is accessible for all ages, they're definitely not getting everything out of the whole service. So much of it is just by exposure, and then hopefully the asking of questions, right? Just like on Passover, we do all this stuff, not so that we can say that we know how to do it, but so that there are questions asked and answers given. I
like that much better.
Yeah, it is much better. That's what I said when I introduced it.
I'm agreeing. Can I agree with you once in a while?
You can. It's very hard for you to cut me off, though, on Zoom. Denise said maybe it's a variation of Naaseh v'nishma. 100%. I think that's exactly what this is. It's just showing us, it's breaking it down, right? It's breaking down the idea of Naaseh v'nishma to be something that you're doing it for these reasons, not just here, do this, but here are the reasons as to why you would do it. Karen.
Just getting back to a point you said about, I was happy the kids were in the building.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of that has to do with Rabbi Shapiro. Yeah.
No, my kids are 31 already, but.
Those kids.
Yeah.
Sorry. I thought you meant this past high holidays. Yeah.
No. But what I'm saying is that when they were young.
Yeah. For sure.
They weren't necessarily sitting in services, but I was glad they were there, just even there.
Yeah. I mean, we talk all the time about how, in a normal world, when Beitani was in Pilch, right, that there are so many kids kind of just like out in the lobby. Well, they're hearing something, right? They're around, they're at shul, they're seeing their friends, they know that this is Shabbat, right? I think you're right. Like just getting them in the vicinity of what's going on is really important. And I think that there is an element of that we're seeing right now, right? The fact that there is an option on the field, whether it's for a family service or for a regular service, where kids can just be, even if they're not paying attention, is amazing. Both for the people on the...
And then they have memories of that.
Correct. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah,
yeah. I'm just going to do one more piece on this from Sforno, because he also breaks it down, and then I'm happy to go back to Rabbi Shapiro. So Sforno says, this I really didn't like, but you can just see that there's something here about the breakdown. It actually doesn't say men at all, so that's just the English translation of it. But in order that the people who were wise in the congregation could understand what was going on, right? Leman yishme'u, that they would then hear it, so that they would understand it. That's where the Na'aseh v'nishma piece comes in, right? The hearing is the understanding. Again, it doesn't say men. The translation in English says men. So it's not breaking it down that way. But then Sforno does say, Veleman yilmadu, I think is, well, okay. So that the people who might not know or who haven't learned can then learn from it, right? That you brought these people forward because you wanted them to hear so that they could understand even more. And you brought them so that they could learn because they might not have learned yet. I don't love this piece because I think it has like an action item associated with it. Whereas to Karen's point, I like the idea of people just showing up and being there and getting something out of it. But I did want you to see that the way that Sforno at least is differentiating between hearing and learning is for the understanding piece and for kind of the what's the English word? Like the depth of the learning that would be going into this.
What I like about that is that it takes it out of the realm of, I mean, I'm not going to break it all down, but there was actually a good amount of like practical how-tos of like what this actually looked like. Like it seemed like this was something that really, really happened.
Yeah.
Where like the king would read the Torah to the people once every 7 years, which is
right.
Which is like fascinating to sort of visualize.
Yeah.
And what I like about this is that it takes it out of the purely like one person sort of putting it out there and everyone just needs to get whatever they can get. Because like the verse says, Laman Yishmeu and Laman Tilmadu, so like why both of those verbs? Well, there are some people who can really hear it, right? There are some people who like they listen to it and they just get it. Yeah. And for some people, they still really need to learn it, and it takes it out of just like, well, the king reads it and you get whatever you get. Some people can hear it, and some people, well, they can like learn it from that experience and also from the people who are, you know, who are able to explain it that much further to them. So that communal piece I actually like a lot.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, do you have other things? I mean, I have more.
I've got a lot. I mean, I got lots of things.
Great. So you can take it home. So we say.
Do you have lots of things?
I do, but you can go.
Well, I don't want to monopolize all the things. How about I'll do one thing. I'll do 1.5 things and you can do however many things from there.
Okay.
Do you want me to do 2.5 things?
Nope. I just want you to go.
Okay. Hi, Rabbi Schatz. It's lovely to share this time with you.
Great.
One piece I just want to call attention to. I mean, I don't have like a ton to say on it per se. I just really appreciate and think it's interesting that the verse, first of all, breaks down the categories of people generally, but says men and women and children and the stranger in your midst, right? I just really like. We've talked about this. This has been, I think, one of the threads that has woven through our time together this year, is, you know, who's included, who's excluded. And this is actually a very inclusive verse, a very inclusive ceremony even. Like this is a ritual thing that you're supposed to do in which pretty much every category of person is included, not just implicitly, but explicitly, right? Whoever you are, this is for you. And we don't necessarily get that in religion in general. We certainly don't always get that in the Torah in terms of how things are framed. So I just I just appreciate that that's in there. I saw an interesting line out of Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim, Guide for the Perplexed, because he's talking about why it is that this is happening. And I think it resonated particularly strongly with me coming out of the experience of Rosh Hashanah, which, regardless of whatever was or wasn't happening on campus and the protocols we needed to follow in different services and programs and this, that, and the other thing, it was just so good to see people. Man, that was great. I know some folks aren't comfortable coming yet. Some people want to stay, and I totally respect and get that. I had to be there. It's part of my job. But in addition to the sense that, well, I'm there, we didn't know how many people would actually come, right? Because you didn't have to sign up for specific services. So we were we get 200 people on campus. Well, we got 500 people on campus. We really had no idea. And people really came. And it just felt so good to see people. I'm an extrovert, which I know shocks people to hear. But I really am in the classical definition of that. The classical definition of an extrovert isn't just someone who's hyperactive and loud necessarily, but someone who really gets their energy from being around other people. And that's very much a big part of how I operate, which is one of the many things that has made the past year and a half challenging for me. So just to be around a large number of other people, so many of whom I already know and care about and love spending time with, that was great. And all of that is a preamble to just this one line out of Moreh Nevuchim, where he says, the use of keeping festivals is plain. It's very simple why we do this. Man derives benefit from such assemblies. The emotions produced renew the attachment to religion. They lead to friendly and social interactions among the people, which you don't necessarily always see this stance out of Rambam. It's really a sociological approach to religion out of this work of medieval religious philosophy, where he said, why do we do this? Because when you're there, it helps you feel connected to and attached to this religious tradition, right? It's not just because God says so. It's not just because you keep the mitzvot. There's actually an internal experience that you have when you keep these chagim, when you show up for these observances, that helps you feel connected. And there's value in that. And there's something really, really vital in that, which I just thought, I think, first of all, yes, right? That's very much what I experienced this week. And I love that Rambam saying it, right? I love that he was saying this 1,000 years ago. He knew that part of the reason we do this, if not the primary reason that we do this, is because when we gather together, we feel connected to our tradition, we feel connected to each other, right? Pretty straightforward, actually. And really sort of this ceremony in terms of making a point to emphasize all the categories of people and saying that there's something happening this year and over this holiday that helps us feel connected to each other. I really appreciated that teaching. It was yeah, man. Yeah, Rambam, you know what's up. And he would say, you're right, Shapiro. I do know what's up, said the Rambam to Matt Shapiro. Right? Rabbi Schatz? Is that what he said?
Yeah, I think my piece actually has a little bit to do with that. So I'm going to just do it right after. And then
so I shouldn't continue the imaginary dialogue between me and Rambam?
No. And then if people have comments, they can share them after.
It's a good dialogue. We're having a great.
So this is, I'm sure it's great. So this is from, I just tried to look up who this is. I can't actually find it. Do you know who Chovot HaLevavot is?
I sure do.
Yeah.
Oh, who is it?
It's Rabbeinu Bachya. That his book is Chovot HaLevavot.
Oh, really?
I thought I could find the book. I was going to have a whole visual aid thing. I'm walking around my office trying to find it.
I could not figure out who wrote it. Okay. So Rabbeinu Bachya says...
Or if you prefer, Chovot HaLevavot.
That's what Denise just said. You missed it. So
I was too busy looking for the book.
So Denise, thank you for telling us that it's Rabbeinu Bachya. So Rabbeinu Bachya says, it sometimes also happens that an individual falls short in some duties and exceeds in others, right? We all have our skill sets, and we all have the things that we need to still work on. The intellectual stimulus varies in different individuals in accordance with their capacity of recognition. I think a modern way of saying this is we all learn differently, and therefore sometimes we're going to take in we're going to, have different intellectual abilities based on how information is being given to us. But the urge of the Torah is not subject to variation. Its form is the same for the child, the youth, one advanced in years, and the old man, the wise and the foolish, even though the resulting practice varies in different classes of individuals. And so Torah says, in regard to the all-encompassing character of the instruction of the Torah for all the people, gather the people together, men and women and children, and the stranger that is within your gate. Further, it is said later on in Deuteronomy, you shall read this law before all of Israel in their hearing. Right? The idea that you would that actually comes right before. It's the line right before. So, but he just put it out of order. That you would be hearing these laws, and that you would be coming to a place of learning in whichever way is best for you. But that Torah is accessible to all of these different ages. That there is something beautiful about being able to put Torah in front of anybody at any age and allowing them to get something out of it. The intellect might vary, right? The ability to understand it might be different, but there's always something that can come out of it. And I would take Rabbeinu Bachya's piece one step further and say, I don't think it's just that they would get something out of it that would be different, but that if you're sitting with a child learning about a Torah portion as an adult, you are definitely going to learn from their perspective on that Torah portion, something that you would have never recognized. So bringing all of these different generations together to learn one specific piece of Torah at this Hakhel moment is really, it's good for everybody, right? Everybody gets a little something out of it. And in community, you're hopefully then talking about the different things you're getting out of it and learning from those different perspectives and different life experiences, and therefore points of view, I should say. So that I just wanted to add kind of to the heel of what Rabbi Shapiro was sharing. I wanted to add that on.
Yeah, I didn't find the book, but I did find a hat.
Great.
I think that's love. I mean, it's an interesting counterpoint, Rabbi Schatz, to what you often talk about, how we all learn differently. And it's sort of the flip side of it, right? That like we all learn differently. And there's also then like the importance of all having the shared something that we're learning from, because that's actually what binds us together, right? That's the unifying piece to all this, which actually connects back a bit to my Rosh Hashanah sermon, I believe.
Mine.
That things can evolve over time, and yet there's still a core something that keeps us all together, which is really important to remember. So with that, I don't know, Rabbi Schatz, do you have a bow? I might.
No, I just think that this is a lovely piece that reminds us that in community there are many different people at many different stages and many different ages and many different abilities and many different experiences, and that the idea is that we all come together, because if we were to all be the same or just have kids or just have adults in community, we wouldn't actually gain from our community that which we should when we are studying Torah together. So that would be the bow I would share.
I'll just conclude, because people at home can't see. Rebecca shared the always reliable source Wikipedia says that Hakhel was renewed in 1945 at the Kotel, and since then every 7 years, which makes sense in terms of it's then not the Shemitah year, but the year after the Shemitah year. So exploring the Parasha class trip to the Kotel fall of next year. Who's in? Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, let's go. Forget Siyum.
Rabbi Shapiro and Rabbi
Schatz. Let's go.
Take Temple Beth on a trip to Israel. That sounds dangerous at best.
That sounds awesome. That would be so much fun.
All right. Shabbat
Something
shalom,
to
everyone.
look forward to as we start.
We'll keep you posted on our trips, our travels to Israel. Shana Tova, Gmar Chatima Tova. We'll see you soon.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.